I don't know how many times I've replayed those 2 days in my head, or how many different endings I've desperately conjured. It doesn't matter. What happened is fixed in the desert dust, written in blood, and burned into my nightmares. Maybe writing it out will finally shut up the voice in my head, telling me I should have done something different. Or maybe I just want someone, anyone, to know the truth about what lurks out there. I'm Casey, by the way. I was driving from LA to Austin, trying to outrun some personal bullshit, namely a pile of credit card debt and a shattered relationship that left me feeling like a complete asshole. My battered Honda Civic was loaded with cheap snacks, water bottles, and false optimism. The desert highway felt endless. It was barely noon, and sweat clung to every inch of my skin. That's when my engine light blinked on. A second later, smoke trickled from under the hood. "You've got to be fucking kidding me," I snapped. I pulled over, popped the hood, and tried not to choke on the stench of burnt oil. No cell reception, of course. In every direction, scorching asphalt, pale, scrub, and the shimmering haze of desert heat. No other cars in sight. For a few frantic minutes, I thought about walking, but the temperature was hovering around, "Sweet Jesus, I'm on fire." Then I saw a sign half buried in sand about a quarter-mile up. "Mason's Rest Stop and Gas, next exit." It felt like a goddamn miracle, so I climbed back into my Civic, coaxed the engine with a soft, "Come on, baby," and managed to limp forward until I hit a dusty side road leading to a worn-out old station. I pulled up to a lonely pump. The place looked like it had been built back when Elvis was still alive, with peeling paint on the sign that read, "Mason's Gas and Service." A tin-roofed garage squatted behind it, and beside that, a small stucco building with a flickering neon open sign in the window. Out front, in a dilapidated lawn chair, sat Jimmy. At least that's what his name tag said. He looked to be in his late 50s, tall, with a gut pushing at his grease-stained shirt, face weathered by 1,000 desert suns. He grinned big when he saw me. "Howdy there, miss," he called. "You look half dead." I killed the engine, stepped out into the searing heat. "Feels worse than half," I muttered, forcing a polite grin. "My car's about to shit itself, radiator or something. It's definitely fucked." Jimmy chuckled. "Let me take a look. Got a few tools in the garage." He set down a can of iced tea and motioned me over. Relief washed through me. He seemed like a genuine good old boy, a friendly caretaker of this outpost. "Oh God, thank you," I said, nearly stumbling over a rock in my eagerness. "I appreciate it." Inside the garage, it smelled like hot metal and old motor oil. He told me to pop the hood. While he tinkered around, shining a flashlight into the engine, I wiped sweat from my brow. "Is there a phone here I can use?" I asked. Jimmy shook his head. "Landline's out. Storm took down the lines last week. Haven't been fixed yet. Cell service is usually horseshit around here too." He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Radiator's cracked. You keep driving. You'll fry the engine. I can order the part from the next town, but it'll take a day or two to get delivered." A real motherfucker, I know. A pit yawned in my stomach. "Are there any hotels or motels nearby?" He grimaced sympathetically. "Not for 50 miles, or more. Look, I've got a spare cot in the side building. It's not the Ritz, but it's better than sleeping in your car out here." I paused, feeling that faint twinge of paranoia. Should I trust him? He seemed harmless, but every cautionary tale of traveling alone popped up in my mind. Then again, it was 100+ degrees outside, and the next real town might be a day's walk. "That's really kind of you," I managed, trying to sound grateful instead of desperate. "Name's Jimmy Mason," he said, extending a calloused hand. "My granddad started this place. I took over after he passed." I shook his hand, ignoring the small voice in my head that hissed, "Get the fuck out of here." Sometimes I hate that voice. Often it's right. Jimmy showed me to a little room connected to the station. It had a single window, painted shut. The bed was a rickety cot pushed up against the wall. There was a mini fridge humming in the corner, a single overhead light with a pull string. An electric fan rattled from a desk. "Sorry it's not fancier," he said. "But it's quiet and private." His eyes lingered on me a second too long. "Thanks," I said, stepping inside. He set my backpack near the cot, gave a polite nod, and left, shutting the door behind him. The silence that followed was thick, oppressive. I told myself, "Casey, you're being paranoid. No big deal. Some old guy offering a place to crash, in the middle of nowhere." I fished out a bottle of water, gulped half of it, then collapsed on the cot. In minutes, I dozed off, lulled by the fan's mechanical hum. I woke, who knows how later, throat parched. My phone read 2:13 a.m., still no signal. With a groan, I forced myself up. My entire body was slick with sweat. The desert nights usually get cold, but in that small, stifling room, it felt like a sauna. I tugged the door open, stepping into the hallway that connected to the small convenience store area. "Jimmy?" I called softly. Maybe there was a bigger fan or water or something. No response. A single flickering bulb lit the hall. The air smelled stale, tinged with something metallic. My heart thumped. The store section was locked, its security gate down. So I wandered toward the back door leading to the garage. Suddenly, I heard it. A faint scratching sound. Low, desperate, like nails on metal. "Hello?" My voice was a tight whisper. The sound stopped. Shit. Maybe it was a rat? Or something caught in a vent? I crept into the garage. Tools hung on pegboards. An old battered fridge hummed next to an industrial sink. Jimmy's silhouette was nowhere to be seen. But near the back, I noticed a door, slightly ajar. The scratching resumed, this time accompanied by a soft whimper. Chills spread across my skin. I inched closer, heart pounding so loud it felt like a drum in my ears. My mind screamed, "Don't fucking do it." But I couldn't help myself. I nudged the door open with the toe of my sneaker. The smell that wafted out nearly made me gag, like rancid meat mixed with bleach. Hunched on the floor was a person. Oh, it was our woman, I guessed from the shape, although the hair was so matted and caked in grime that it was hard to tell. Her arms and legs were bound. She looked up, wide-eyed and terrified. Her lips moved, but no sound came, just wheezing gasps. Every inch of her flesh was covered in raw, red welts and bruises. Something else, too. Open cuts that looked infected. My throat tightened at the sight. I almost screamed. My body seized up. Then the woman made a weak, guttural plea. "Please," she rasped, tears streaking her filthy cheeks. "Help me." I stepped back, mind reeling. 1,000 questions fought for dominance, but the loudest was run. I turned to bolt, but a figure moved behind me, blocking the exit. Jimmy. His weathered face was half in shadow, half illuminated by the flickering overhead light. All that folksy warmth was gone, replaced by a sinister calm that made my blood run cold. "You weren't supposed to see that, Casey," he said quietly, voice tightening around my name like a noose. "What the fuck is this?" I stammered, adrenaline surging through my veins. My hands shook. "Why is she tied up?" He set down a crowbar with a metallic clang. "You wouldn't understand," he said, stepping forward, corners of his mouth twitching in a mockery of a smile. "What did I tell you about staying put? It's dangerous to wander around." The stench of that putrid room filled my nostrils again, made me want to hurl. "Let her go," I demanded, voice trembling. "Jesus Christ, Jimmy, what the hell are you doing?" He grabbed a wrench from a shelf, turned it over in his hands as if testing its weight. "She was trespassing, trying to steal shit. We all Have to learn our lessons, right? The desert is an unforgiving teacher. My stomach knotted in pure horror. This was insane. Trespassing? So you tie someone up and torture them? My instincts screamed that I was next. Listen, I tried. I'll just go. I won't say a word to anyone. I promise. He cut me off with a shake of his head. I'm not a fool, Casey. You think if I let you walk, you won't run straight to the cops? He took another step, eyes flicking to my shaking hands. Don't lie to me, motherfucker. I know fear when I see it. Everything in me screamed, fight or you're dead. I lunged for a nearby shelf where I spotted a screwdriver. My hand closed around it. Jimmy snarled, swinging the wrench. I dodged, barely, but it caught my upper arm in a glancing blow that made me bite back a scream of pain. You bastard, I shouted, staggering backwards. He came at me again, but this time I managed to jab the screwdriver at his midsection. It sank into flesh, and he let out a guttural cry. Cunt! He growled, doubling over. Blood oozed around the handle. I took my chance, grabbing the door leading back to the main store. I sprinted, footsteps pounding on the concrete. I shoved, opened the door that led outside, bursting into the open desert night. Cool air slapped my face, but I didn't dare stop. The starlight revealed the lonely highway. My car was right there, but it was damn near inoperable. I fished my keys from my pocket anyway, scrambled into the driver's seat and turned them. Ignition. The engine coughed, stuttered. Come on, I hissed. Come on, come on. I saw movement in my side mirror. Jimmy, limping, cradling his side, eyes blazing with murderous rage. Fuck. The car gave a weak sputter, and I slammed the gas. For a second, the engine complied, moving maybe 10 yards. Then it died with a whimper. In the mirror. Jimmy lifted a shotgun. A flash of light, an explosion of sound. My rear windshield erupted. Jagged glass rained onto the back seat. I yelped, ducking down. God damn it! My heart was a jackhammer. I crawled out the passenger side, hearing him laugh behind me. You can run, he shouted, voice echoing in the stillness. But you ain't leaving this place, you son of a whore. Terror seized me, but I knew a short burst of speed might save my life. I took off, sprinting into the desert behind the station. My shoes sank into loose sand. The horizon was just black emptiness, no hint of civilization or lights. The only way was forward. The next shotgun blast whizzed overhead, buckshot scattering in the dirt. I nearly pissed myself. Keep going, I told myself. My lungs burned. Then my foot hooked a rock. I went sprawling face first, sand scraping my cheeks. Panic flared. I scrambled up again, ignoring the stinging pain. Ahead, I spotted a cluster of what looked like old junked cars. Maybe I could hide. My chest heaved. Another shot rang out. The bullet tore into a car door mere feet away, ricocheting with a metallic shriek. Motherfucker, I swore. I ducked behind an overturned pickup, burying myself in the shadows. My arm throbbed where the wrench hit me, and I could feel something warm trickling down. Blood or sweat, or both. My ears pounded with each thunderous heartbeat. Footsteps crunched in the sand. Jimmy was close. Casey, he called, voice too, calm, like we were playing a twisted game of hide and seek. Don't make this worse. Come on out. I'll make it quick. My throat felt raw with terror. No fucking way. I'd sooner jam the screwdriver in my own throat than let him get me again. I scanned the area. Something glinted in the moonlight. A dented crowbar leaning against a rusted tire rim. Gingerly, I crept over and picked it up, pressing it to my chest as if it might shield me. A plan formed. If he came around the truck, I'd swing for his knees, then run. Clutching the crowbar, I forced my breathing to slow. The footsteps grew louder, and I peered through a gap in the metal. Jimmy was only a few feet away, shotgun at the ready. A small flashlight beam cut across the desert ground. "Don't you see?" he muttered, scuffing the sand with his boots. "That girl back there, she needed punishing. The world's full of liars and thieves. I'm just weeding them out." He paused, spat. "And you, Casey, you had to fucking snoop. He's insane." Every cell in my body bristled with dread. I gripped the crowbar. My heart hammered so violently, I was sure he'd hear it. He moved, closer, boots scraping the truck's side. I held my breath. The flashlight's beam cut across my hiding spot. Any second, he'd see me. The tension was suffocating. Suddenly, he turned, stepping around the front of the pickup. Now. I lunged. With a guttural cry, I swung the crowbar at his legs. It connected with a sickening crunch. Jimmy screamed, buckling. The shotgun went off, the blast firing harmlessly into the sky. Adrenaline surged. I whipped the crowbar again, smashing it into his arm. He dropped the shotgun. "You fucking bitch!" he shrieked, agony twisting his features. I grabbed the barrel of the shotgun, yanking it away. My arm ached, so bad I almost lost my grip, but I forced myself to hold on. Jimmy scrambled backward, eyes wild with pain. "You think you can just..." he started, then roared in anger as I brought the crowbar down on his hand. Bones cracked under the impact. He bellowed, thrashing in the sand. I took a step back, panting, shotgun in one hand, crowbar in the other. I wanted to run, but a deeper fury coursed through my veins. This cocksucker had tortured a woman. He tried to kill me. If I ran now, who knew what he'd do if he got up? He'd probably hunt me down. A voice inside whispered, "Finish it. End him." I hovered there, trembling, staring at him curled in the dirt, whimpering like a wounded animal. We locked eyes. His lips curled, spitting blood. "Casey," he rasped. "You ain't got the guts." I let out a shaky breath. My stomach twisted. "Do it." I raised the shotgun, finger on the trigger. He laughed, a wet, bitter sound. "Do it," he challenged. "Fucking do it." I squeezed. The shot boomed in the open desert, echoing across the dunes. The recoil nearly tore the weapon from my hands. I stumbled back, ears ringing. Jimmy jerked once, then went limp. Blood pooled beneath him. For a moment, I just stood there, the gun heavy in my shaking grip. My mind buzzed with shock and relief. I'd never taken a life before. The reality of it crashed over me. Nausea welled, and I dropped the shotgun, doubling over to vomit onto the sand. When the retching stopped, I wiped my mouth and realized, that poor woman. If she was still alive in that fucking room, I had to help her. Summoning what was left of my courage, I limped back toward the garage. The place was dead silent except for the thudding of my heart. Inside, the overhead lights glared. I returned to that hidden room. My eyes immediately latched onto the woman, slumped exactly where she'd been. Her breathing was shallow, ragged. I crouched next to her, ignoring the stench of dried blood and piss. "Hey," I whispered. He's gone. I'm getting you out of here." Up close, I could see the damage. Flesh marred with cuts, bruises, burns. Every inch was a grotesque map of suffering. I swallowed thickly, trying not to imagine the pain she'd endured. I fumbled with the duct tape around her wrists, wincing as bits of her skin tore off with it. She whimpered, tears spilling from raw, puffy eyes. My trembling fingers finally freed her arms and legs. She let out a sob, burying her face in my shoulder. I gingerly put my arms around her, heart pounding with pity and fury. "You're safe now," I lied. Because who really feels safe after something like this? I had to find a way to contact someone, anyone. But Jimmy had told me the lines were down and my phone had no signal. I half-carried, half-dragged the woman outside into the cool desert air. My car was done for, but maybe I could see if Jimmy had a working truck or something else parked out back. We limped around the side of the building. Sure enough, behind the station, there was an older but still functional tow truck. Keys in the ignition. "Thank you, sweet Jesus," I muttered. Gently, I helped her into the passenger seat. I turned the key, and the engine coughed, roared to life. My nerves were electric. Blood still trickled down my arm. Every breath was agony. But we were getting out of this fucking place if it killed me. Shifting into drive, I peeled onto the highway, leaving behind the neon sign flickering in the desert darkness. We drove for about 20 minutes, though it felt like an eternity. The desert stretched in all directions. The woman, her name was Teresa, finally spoke in a hoarse whisper. "You saved me. Thank you." She broke into sobs. I reached over, pressed her hand. "Hey, don't thank me yet. We're not out of the woods." But the sun was creeping over the horizon, and around 6 a.m. we saw the faint outline of a diner sign. Joe's Oasis. My heart soared. That damn near brought me to tears. We parked sloppily in the gravel lot. I rushed inside, breathless, explaining to a wide-eyed waitress what had happened. At least the bare-bones version. "We were attacked. She's hurt. We need help." The woman hurried to call 911. My head spun with relief. Finally, we were safe. The cavalry was on the way. It's been a week since then. I'm in a cheap motel room just outside El Paso. The police took statements, asked me 1,000 questions. The local sheriff traveled to Mason's Gas and Service. They found Jimmy's body and at least 2 other corpses in shallow graves out back. They asked me if I wanted to come identify them. Hell no. The bullet wound to his chest was proof enough of what happened. The cops told me I wouldn't be charged for defending myself. One officer even said, "You did the world a favor." You know, but does that help me sleep? Fuck no. Every night, I bolt awake. Sure, I hear that scratching sound behind a closed door, or the echo of Jimmy's laugh in the dark. I see the battered woman, Teresa, in my dreams. Only it's me lying on that floor, limbs bound, no escape. I taste copper in my mouth. I can still feel the recoil of the shotgun the moment I ended a man's life. Was it justice, or did I become a killer too? I tell myself it was survival, but the nightmares whisper otherwise. They say I'll never wash the blood off my conscience. Teresa's in the hospital, being treated for the infections and injuries. They say she'll pull through, but she's got a long road of rehab ahead. She might never fully recover from the trauma. And me? I'm haunted by what I saw, by what I did. I see Jimmy's face every time I close my eyes. First that friendly grin, then that twisted rictus of hate. I've got one more day in this motel before I move on, keep heading east. Part of me wants to ditch the entire trip and go home. But every time I picture that rest stop, empty and silent now, I realize there are worse places than home. Worse nightmares than drowning in debt. Sometimes I wonder if I should have noticed the warning signs sooner. The uneasy vibe, the locked doors, the faint smell of rot. But I didn't. And in one sense, maybe that saved me. If I'd spotted them earlier, I might have panicked and run, only for him to gun me down right there in the desert. My name is Casey, and I survived the worst 2 days of my life. In that dusty corner of nowhere, my illusions about safety, kindness, and trust got torn to shreds. The truth is, the scariest monsters aren't in the stories. They're the assholes who smile at you in broad daylight, offering you a cold drink and a helping hand, then tie you up in a back room to carve you like a fucking turkey. So if you ever find yourself out there, 100 miles from civilization, and a friendly face waves you over to some godforsaken rest stop, do yourself a favor. Keep driving. No matter how hot it is, no matter how desperate you feel, keep going. Because sometimes the oasis is just a mirage, and the real desert horror is the man behind the grin, waiting to make you his next victim. And if, for some reason, you do end up in the crosshairs of a psycho like Jimmy, remember this one thing: it's you or them. There's no gentle way out. There's no compromise. You'll have to become the monster you fear, if only for a moment, to survive. I did. Now I live, with that moment replaying in my head, a short, brutal act that decided my life. Fuck. Even as I write this, my hands are shaking. But I'll keep writing it until I can breathe again, until I can stop seeing the desert bathed in red. Maybe that'll happen one day. Or maybe not. The desert never really leaves you. It clings to your skin, seeps into your nightmares, and reminds you that real horror isn't some supernatural bullshit. It's just people. People and the violence they'll do when no one's watching, and no one's around to stop them. I stopped one of them. I had no choice. And every single night, I relive it in my dreams. That's the fucking price of survival. And I'm still paying.